The arena felt wrong before the cameras settled, before the music cues or familiar rhythms could anchor the night. The lights were steady, the ring clean, the crowd present, yet a low unease hummed through the building. People shifted in their seats without knowing why. Signs were lifted, then lowered again. The commentary desk spoke in measured tones, trying to sound normal, trying to sell routine. But even their voices carried a strain that did not belong to an ordinary SmackDown. The opening match ended without incident, yet the applause was thin and scattered. When the bell rang, a strange delay followed, as if the audience expected something else to happen. The commentators hesitated, filling the space with half-sentences, glancing toward the entrance ramp more than their monitors. One of them laughed quietly, then stopped, realizing the sound did not fit the room. A production cue missed its timing. The Tron flickered to black for half a second longer than intended. In that pause, the crowd reacted first. Not with cheers, but with a collective intake of breath, sharp and instinctive. People stood up without raising their hands. A murmur rolled across sections like a warning rather than excitement. The commentators fell silent, not because they were told to, but because they had no words ready. One asked, barely audible, if something was wrong. The other did not answer. 8 camera operators swung toward the stage, then back to the ring, uncertain where the story was unfolding. The crowd noise shifted again, splitting into pockets of confusion. Some booed preemptively, others shushed them, demanding clarity that no one could provide. A chant tried to start and collapsed after 2 syllables. The ennies deepened, settling heavy in the chest. Nothing had appeared yet. No music, no name on the screen. Just the crowd, reacting to a feeling they recognized but could not place. The commentators finally acknowledged it, admitting they were sensing the same tension. They speculated, cautiously, that something unscheduled might be happening. When the camera returned to the entrance ramp, the crowd leaned forward as one. The silence that followed was louder than any pop. Felt like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for a moment it wasn't sure it wanted to see. No announcement came to relieve them. Instead, a faint movement behind the curtain drew eyes without permission. Security shifted positions. A stagehand froze, then disappeared from view. The audience noticed every detail, reacting before interpretation could catch up. Phones rose, not to record triumph, but to capture proof in case denial followed. The commentators whispered now, acknowledging that whatever was about to happen was not framed for celebration. The ring sat empty, exposed, waiting like an accusation. When the house lights dimmed slightly, not fully, the crowd responded with a nervous groan. It was the sound of people realizing they were already involved, whether they wanted to be or not. No one smiled and no one clapped, and no one looked away anymore. The curtain finally moved, not with confidence, but with hesitation, as if pushed by obligation rather than intent.
Ow.
The crowd did not erupt. They reacted first with soundless recognition, then with noise that fractured in conflicting directions. A few gasps escaped. Several boos arrived early, unsure of their target. Others stood frozen, hands over mouths, staring at a figure they never expected to see framed this way. The commentator struggled immediately. When asked the name out loud, then stopped, realizing the weight of speaking it. The other reminded viewers they were live, as if that alone explained the disbelief. No music played. Footsteps echoed instead, heavy and uneven, amplifying the awkwardness of the moment. The figure walked slowly, eyes forward, refusing the ramp's demand for spectacle. The crowd reacted again before any explanation could form. A chant began, then twisted into something harsher, words overlapping, contradicting each other. Cheers fought boos in neither one. The silence between those reactions was worse, thick with judgment. The returning presence felt intrusive, like a private wound exposed under bright lights. The commentators acknowledged the division, their voices shaking as they described what they were seeing rather than why. They noted the body language, the tension in the shoulders, the absence of acknowledgement toward the fans. This was not framed as a comeback. It felt like an interruption. As the figure reached ringside, a fan threw their hands up in disbelief, shouting something lost under the noise. Another fan turned away entirely. Camera shots avoided close-ups, then reluctantly returned to them, capturing a face marked by resolve and something heavier beneath it. The ring steps were climbed slowly, deliberately, as if each step carried consequence. Inside the ring, the figure stood still. No pose, no salute, just presence. The crowd reacted again, louder now, arguing with itself. The commentators admitted they did not know what to say. One questioned whether this was sanctioned. The other suggested history would judge this moment harshly or kindly, but not quietly. When the microphone was offered, it was not taken. That refusal drew another wave of reaction, sharper and angrier. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, and still, no one spoke. The crowd filled the void themselves, shouting accusations, questions, and pleas all at once. Security hovered closer, sensing volatility rather than danger. The figure finally looked around, meeting the divided audience without apology. That eye contact shifted the mood again, replacing shock with confrontation. The commentators fell quiet, understanding that anything said would feel like endorsement or condemnation. The ring announcer stayed seated, hands folded, aware this moment was no longer performative. It was something raw, unfolding without safety rails, and everyone could feel it sinking deeper than planned. The moment broke when the microphone finally lifted, not dramatically, but with visible reluctance. The crowd reacted before words arrived, cutting off the attempt with noise born of fear and frustration. The commentators asked for calm they knew would not come. One admitted this felt heavier than storyline, heavier than rivalry, something personal bleeding into public space. The voice that emerged was steady, but not strong. It carried exhaustion rather than confidence. The first sentence barely formed before it was swallowed by boos. The figure paused, absorbing it without protest. That pause angered some and unsettled others. Silence followed again, uneasy and sharp. Backstage, tension spiked instantly. Cameras caught wrestlers peering from behind curtains, arms crossed, expressions guarded. Some shook their heads. Others watched without blinking. No one celebrated. No one clapped. The locker room felt divided along lines that had nothing to do with alignment or brand. The commentary team filled space carefully, acknowledging the reality of the reaction while avoiding judgment. One questioned the timing. Another wondered aloud who had approved this. Their uncertainty mirrored the audience's, magnifying the discomfort. The words spoken in the ring were not an apology, nor a challenge. They were an explanation that satisfied no one. Each sentence seemed to reopen something the crowd had tried to bury. Reactions shifted with every phrase, cheers rising briefly before collapsing under louder dissent. The moral split became impossible to ignore. Media outlets reacted in real time. Headlines formed before the segment ended. Social feeds flooded with clipped footage, stripped of context, inflaming opinion. The arena felt smaller as the weight of external eyes pressed inward. The segment ended without resolution. No attack, no embrace. Just a microphone lowered and a slow exit under mixed reaction. The commentators did not sign off cleanly. One admitted this would follow the company for a long time. The other said nothing. Backstage, the returning figure walked alone. Conversations stopped as they passed. Some eyes held sympathy, others held blame. The weight of the decision began to show, shoulders slumping now that the lights were fading. This was not closure. It was exposure. And everyone, including the person at the center, understood that whatever came next would be shaped by this moment, whether they were ready or not. The aftermath arrived faster than expected. Interviews were canceled. Meetings were called behind closed doors. The locker room buzzed with arguments whispered and then raised. Some defended the moment as necessary truth. Others called it reckless damage. No consensus formed, only deeper division. The returning figure sat alone later, hands shaking slightly, replaying the crowd's sound over and over. Not the boos alone, but the silence between them. That silence cut deeper than any rejection. Family members watched from home, reaching out with messages that went unanswered. The commentators were pulled aside, reminded of obligations of tone. They nodded, aware that what they felt on air could not be fully controlled. The show moved on the following week, but the shadow lingered. Crowd reactions shifted. Trust felt thinner. Sponsors asked questions. Executives measured fallout. Every appearance was now weighted with scrutiny. The figure's legacy felt unstable, not erased, but distorted. past achievements reframed through a harsher lens. Other wrestlers spoke privately of fear, not of the person, but of the precedent. If this could happen unsmoothed and unresolved, then no moment was safe. The ring no longer guaranteed catharsis. The returning figure considered walking away again. The thought brought relief and shame in equal measure. This was not the return imagined in quiet moments. This was survival under judgment. The audience debated endlessly. Some softened. Others hardened. No opinion faded completely. The moment refused to settle into history. What remained was discomfort, a sense that something important had been forced into the open without consent. The company could not undo it. The crowd could not forget it. The person at the center could not escape it. This was the cost of being seen again, fully, without control. Weeks later, the footage still circulated, grainy and clipped, missing the feeling that filled the room. Those who were there remembered the silence most clearly. Not the noise, not the words, but the pause where everyone understood something irreversible had happened. The returning figure watched that pause alone one night, volume low. They noticed details others missed. Fan turning away. A child looking confused. A commentator swallowing hard. It all felt heavier now, without adrenaline to dull it. No redemption arc followed. No punishment either. Just consequence. Appearances became rare, deliberate. Each step toward the ring carried memory with it. The crowd never reacted the same way again. Some fans eventually forgave. Others never would. Both felt justified. The division remained part of the landscape, altering how moments were received. Once cracked, does not return whole. The company adapted, careful now, quieter in presentation. The lesson lingered unspoken. Not every return heals, some only reopen. The figure accepted that truth slowly. This moment was not about reclaiming anything. It was about confronting what could not be fixed. The weight settled into something like resolve, but not peace. On one final night, after another mixed reaction, the figure stood in the ring again, saying nothing. The crowd reacted, softer this time, tired rather than angry. That felt worse somehow. As the lights dimmed, there was no closure offered. Just a shared understanding that this moment had changed the rules. It was never meant to be celebrated. It was meant to be endured. And long after the cameras stopped, the question remained unanswered and heavy, about whether returning was braver than staying away or simply harder to live with afterward.